So in today's video, we're going to be talking about array lists. And previously, we've talked about arrays and how it's a data structure that can store elements or objects of the same object type or data type. Um, and we're going to be talking about array lists and how you can use that within a program. And basically what an array list is, it's an alternative to an array, obviously, but it provides an alternative way to storing a list of objects. And some benefits to it. It has very easy insertion and deletion and shifting of elements within that list. And just another thing, an array list is very much so resizable during runtime, so during your program, when your program is running. And just to look at some basic array list initialization, we have our array list with our key identifier array list, and we say new array list because an array list is an object, and so we have to use the keyword new, and we say array list is equal to new array list. And then what we have is our add function here, which will just add those elements to the list one after another. So we have ArrayList.add 1, ArrayList.add 5, ArrayList.add 12. And if we go ahead and print just our the name of our array list, it'll print out 1, 5, 12 within brackets. And we're also going to look at some useful array list implementations. And one thing about array lists that's different from arrays is that array lists have a lot of methods that are methods and functions that are associated with it that you can use to get certain items and manipulate different things and change the contents of your array list. And so we set an array list equals new array list, and then we have just this line that says list.add2, list.add32, list.add54, and list.add7. So when we go ahead and print list from there, we'll get 2, 32, 54, 7 in brackets, and that's pretty self-explanatory. But another function that you can use is the get function, and what that allows you to do is to get the object or the element at that index. So this says list.get2, and so we look at our 2 element, and this would be 0, 1, and 2. And so if we went and printed this, I actually didn't put system.out.println before any of these statements, just because that's a lot of typing and I don't need to do a lot of typing. So we're just assuming that if you print these, you'll get the value. And so list.get2, that would print 54. List.get0 would obviously print 2. Our add method, what it allows us to do is to add new objects to the list. But what it does is when you just have that add method, it'll add it to the end of the array list. So it'll put it in order from when you use that add method. But if you specify an index with your add method, so if you have 2 numbers within your add method separated by a comma, this will basically say list.add 0 and 3. And what this is going to do is it's going to add the object or the integer 3 to the 0 index. And what this will do is it'll put 3 at the 0 index, and it'll basically shift all these numbers up 1. So 2 would become the first index, and 32 would become the second, with 3 being the 0. And what this set method allows us to do is pretty similar, except what it does is it doesn't shift every element up. What it does is it will replace whatever number you set to whatever number is there at that index. And so we set 0 to 66. And that will, in turn, set 66 in place of that 3 that we just added. And so this will now be, the list will now have the objects or the elements 66, 32, 54, and 7. And we also have this .size method, and this is similar to .length without parentheses when working with arrays. And this will basically just get the size starting at index 1. So we have 66, 1, 2, 3, 4. And if we go ahead and print list.size, that'll give us 4. And also size is the method that we use within our for loops instead of using length. So if you did list.length in a for loop or in whatever scenario or situation, you would obviously get an error message because that length function is not compatible with an array list. And then this remove method just basically removes whatever object is at that index of 0, so that'll remove the 66. And then we have our clear method, which can just clear the contents of our array list and give us a blank or default array list that's initialized. And so what we're going to do now is take a look at some practice problems that will hopefully increase your understanding of ArrayList. So what I did here is I wrote out two methods that will hopefully test your understanding of ArrayList. But what we have to do first is we have to actually import the ArrayList class, because it's actually not included in just a basic Java. So that's import java.util.ArrayList. And that should allow us to initialize and declare an array list. And so what we're going to do is we're going to look at this public int count num method, and that takes in an array list. And what this means here is basically everything, and you don't actually need this, but this basically just says that that the array list will basically be of type int, and in this case it'll be of type string. And sort of the small reason why you sort of have to do this, and that is this where you define the object of which that array list is made up of. So for example, with string, you want to be able to use the methods that are involved with string, and we'll take a look at that when we actually do the method. But what this method says is count num, and what this is going to do is it's going to count the amount of times that num appears in ArrayList. And so if you want to pause the video and sort of figure out how to do this, we've done things similar to this, but this is the first time we've worked with an array list, so I'm going to work it out for you. What we're going to do is we're just going to create a class, an object, or an instance of this class, and we're just going to call it test, and it's equal to new learning. And this should allow us to access our methods. And now what we're going to do is we're going to say test.countNum. And it's going to give us an error message because we're not passing through these parameters, so we're just going to create an array list, and that looks like this. So array list, we can just call it A is equal to new array list, and we can just say we can actually set the num that we're going to check as 5, and we can just add a.add a bunch of objects and just copy and paste that. So we need to be able to iterate throughout our array list, and we're just going to add 5, 6, 4, 5, or 4, 5, and 5. And then we can delete this and pass in our array list A that we created. Okay. And now we're going to be counting the amount of times that this int num that we passed, which is in this case 5, appears in this array list, which we declared as A. So here's what we're going to do. Because we need to count the amount of times that a number appears in an array list, we need to be able to, similarly to an array, be able to iterate over or through the array list and be able to check some stuff. So the first thing we're going to do is set a local variable count to 0. You don't need to call it count, obviously, but specificity within your variables in your program is super important. So int I is equal to 0, int I for index, I is less than ArrayList, and in this case we use .size, I++, with our opening and closing braces, and we'll basically say if ArrayList.get, and we have to use this get method to access the index. If it was just an array, we would use the format array of I. But with an array list, we have to do ArrayList.getI. This accesses the object at that index. So ArrayList.getI, if ArrayList.getI equals num count plus plus. And because this is a method of type int, we have to return count. And that should do it. And if we look at our array list, we have 5 3 times in our array list. So if we go ahead and say system.out.println, because if we actually want to see what this will print, we need to access that method and print it out. And if we go ahead and press run, you'll see that it prints 3 because 5 appears 3 times in our array list. Okay. Now, our next method is our count odd array list length. And what this is basically going to do is with this array list, we're going to count the amount of objects in this string array list that has an odd length. And yeah. And so what we can do is we can just really quickly just delete all this stuff. We don't need access to this method anymore, but the solution is right there if you need it. And we are basically going to create an array list and call that s is equal to new array list. And we can say array list, or sorry, s.add, because we're just going to add a bunch of new functions or objects to our list. So s.add hello, s.add hi, s.add wow, and s.add comp sci. Okay. So we are just counting the odd strings in our array list, and so again, we're probably gonna have to create a loop because we're gonna have to be able to iterate through our array list and manipulate the different objects that are present. I is less than ArrayList.length because we don't want to get an overflow error. Sorry, .size I++, and we can say this: if ArrayList dot get I, and whoops, we forgot our default variable of count, and this is going to be our iterator, so we're going to be able to count the amount, and we say ArrayList dot get I. So if ArrayList dot get I, and then we use our dot length method because we're counting the length of those strings. So dot length %2 or mod 2 does not equal 0 in count ++. And then we, instead of returning 0, return count. And I'll explain what this does. So this basically says, and this is while this is looping through the array list, if ArrayList.getI, so the object at that index, dot length, and because it's a string, that object at the index of I is a string, we can take the length of it, and then mod 2 does not equal 0. If the length is even, it will not have a remainder because it will be divisible by 2. But if it's an odd length, it will have a remainder, so it won't be 0, and that will in turn increment count. And one thing to show here really quickly is if we don't use this string, if we don't specify this array list to be of a string data type using that E interface, then what will happen is we'll get an error on this length method because a length method is a method of the string class or the string object. And so it says the method length is undefined for the type object. And if you don't specify that data type, it'll just create an array list of the object's object, and length is not an object of an object, if that makes any sense. So you have to specify string. So if we go ahead and run, actually we need to pretty quick statement that says system.out.println test.count odd array length using the array list s. And we can go ahead and run this. and it again prints 3 because we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Hello, hi is not 1, wow is 1, and comp size 1, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Sorry. So yeah, that's basically ArrayLists. In the next video, we're going to be talking about a huge program that we can write that's going to incorporate everything that we've learned in this video. So I hope you look forward to it. I definitely do too. Thank you.